This episode sees us finishing off in Wisconsin, visiting Illinois, Minnesota and South Dakota on a combination of our 2012 and 2018 road trips. It brings our total to 9 out of 50 states visited so far. We headed off for a grand day out in Chicago. We drove to Evanston, obviously had to take some photographs having Evan's name in it, and we hopped onto the purple line of the L, elevated rail, at Main Station. We had bought a day pass for a day's unlimited travel on the CTA, the Chicago's Transport Authority. We wanted to start off at Chicago's tallest building, the Willis Tower. It used to be called the Sears Tower. We had a very helpful person at our stop that said that they were going right past the Willis Tower, so we could follow them. This was very helpful. It would save us lots of time. We didn't need to try and figure out how to work out the subway system. A lady in the foyer was shouting out that it was a 2-hour wait to get to the top, but we were very fortunate. We were up in 35 minutes. The views from the top of the building of Chicago were spectacular, particularly the view across Lake Michigan. It reminded us a lot of Dubai. We were on the 103rd floor, but it was indoors, unlike the Empire State Building. We were glad that we got to see the universe structure at the base of the Willis Tower. It later had to be removed due to renovations. We caught bus 130 to the museum campus after unexpectedly coming across the Route 66 sign. Chicago is where the route stops. Once at the museum campus, we found a great picnic spot with amazing views of the city. We ate our packed lunch and took lots of photographs. We wandered through Millennium Park and enjoyed Buckingham Fountain and the beam. We enjoyed the views of the city reflected in the giant shiny beam. We wandered along Magnificent Mile and stopped in and had some Starbucks. We hopped onto a bus to the John Hancock Building, which is the 3rd tallest building in Chicago, and caught the lift up to the Signature Room to enjoy more views of the city. The sun was sinking lower on the horizon, and we thought a break on Oak Beach would be good. We walked a couple of blocks to the beach and were pleasantly surprised. The sand was lovely and white, the water was blue, and there were even some waves. By now we were quite sticky from a hot, humid day and took a refreshing dip in the lake. We lay in the sun, but the shadows of the tall buildings soon loomed on the beach and we started getting chilly. We got into our running gear and went for a 10-kilometer run north along the Lake Shore Trail through Lincoln Park. It only started getting dark at around 9 p.m. So with some help, we managed to find our way to Wilson Station and caught the train to Grand. We caught a bus the wrong way initially and then hopped off and caught it back to Navy Pier. By now it was really dark and we walked to the end of the pier and got a good view of the city skyline. We hopped back onto the L to Main Station in Evanston. We got there at about 11:30 p.m. We ran back to our car and struggled to keep our eyes open for the 50-minute drive back to Kenosha, where we showered and collapsed into bed, exhausted after a very full, active day. In 2018, we revisited Chicago and visited our favorite 2 things from the city, the sights of the skyline and another quick visit to the beam. We went to Friends for supper and they treated us to Chicago's famous deep dish pizza. I was pleasantly surprised, not being a fan of thick crust pizza. It was completely different to thick crust. It was almost like a quiche in some ways, lots and lots of ingredients. The day before we were due to leave Wisconsin early in the morning, our iPad that we'd had shipped from B&H in New York to Kenosha finally arrived. We were very relieved because we didn't want to have to delay our early start the following morning. So we were grateful when the UPS guy rang the doorbell and delivered our iPad. Some of the people that we'd met in Kenosha came and fetched us at noon and drove us along the Kenosha lakefront to a restaurant called Mangia. Apparently it's Obama's favourite chef's restaurant. We had a very good time connecting and really enjoyed the food. We woke up at 5 a.m. ready to tackle our 1,300 kilometre, 13.5-hour trip to Wall, South Dakota. We filled up with some petrol and then headed west along the I-90. We stopped off at a Des Moines River rest stop and had a picnic lunch. We were trying to take photographs of the Minnesota flag, but the wind was not blowing it very nicely. So a kind man at the rest stop lowered the flag for us so that we could take pictures with it. In 2018, we had more time for stops along the way in Minnesota. So we stopped in Minneapolis and enjoyed taking in the sights of the Fauché Tower, especially with its reflections in the surrounding buildings. We enjoyed a little bit of art and culture. We had fun exploring the sculpture garden, although it was very, very hot and humid, quite oppressive. Minneapolis is cold in the winter, so the city is very well set up with lots of indoor walkways. So you'll be driving under a walkway between two very tall buildings through much of the city. Many of our stops in Minnesota turned out just to be stops at places with interesting names. We found a place called Rogers, which we obviously had to stop at and take a good number of photographs of various train station signs and town signs. We also found a place called Climax, which was a little bit of an anticlimax to visit, but had a fun name. Then we came across Evansville, and this definitely had to be a stop for Evan to pose next to a whole lot of Evansville signs. Just as we were leaving Evansville, I spotted a town called Tracy on the map nearby. I was really desperate to go and visit it so that I could too pose next to some Tracy signs, but unfortunately it was a 90-minute detour and we couldn't really afford to be making a 90-minute detour at this stage. The Midwest farms along the way became a familiar sight. Having visited Minneapolis on the way to North Dakota, we decided to stop at its twin city, St. Paul's, on the way back. And what better place to stop in than St. Paul's Cathedral. That night, we camped in the rain at the Forestville Mystery Cave State Park. Forestville is a little ghost town that was last inhabited in 1910. But the main reason that we'd stopped there was because we'd wanted to explore the mystery caves the next morning. We had a very good tour guide, and the most exciting thing about the excursion was when he told us all to switch our phones off and he switched his lights out, and you couldn't even see your hand in front of your face. It was so dark, obviously with absolutely no natural light coming in. After making good progress through Minnesota, we crossed the state line into South Dakota, where we decided to stop in at Sioux Falls and see some of the sights there. The falls over the red rocks were very pretty, and we're glad we made the effort. We saw a cute squirrel-like creature, which we later found out was called a 13-striped ground squirrel. Beautiful, lovely markings. The next episode will see us exploring more of South Dakota and visiting Wyoming.